know me, not all of you know me though. My name is Derek Salinas-Lazarski. I'm the Associate Dean of Arts and Sciences here at Triton College. I work with Kevin Lee and Dean Rick Segovia right there in the Office of Arts and Sciences. I've been here 4.5 months, so I'm still pretty new. But one of the things that I love to do in my role as a dean is do professional development presentations like this one on pedagogy. I love teaching teachers how to teach and talking about it. My background is in English. I was an English adjunct prior to going into administration. I also taught ESL. So that's where some of my examples are going to come from. But the way for those of you who have taken one of my sessions or sat in one of my sessions before, you know that the way I design these sessions is I want to give you as teachers practical things that you can take and put right into your classrooms. If you have to teach in 2 hours, you should be able to take something from this and plug it into the if you want. But at the same time, you can take what we're going to go over and go really deep with it too. So the next time you're designing a lesson, you can say, okay, am I infusing critical thinking into this lesson? Okay, let me look at the resources that I got from this presentation and think about what we talked about and see if I can pull some things to create some activities to get my students thinking critically about whatever it is, okay? I know not everyone, I have a secondary teaching certificate, so I student taught high school and realized I did not want to teach high school, and so that's how I wound up at college here. But I know not everyone who teaches at a community college has an education background. So I want to give you all the pedagogy with a little bit of theory, but just a little bit. And if you want to talk theory, we can talk our ears off about it, because like I said, I want to get to the practical. So today we're going to talk about definitions of critical thinking. Then we're going to talk about some models of critical thinking. And again, this is like a big menu. I'm just giving you a big info dump because you're all great teachers and you can pick and choose what you want, but we're going to talk about tangible ways in the classroom, and which is what we're going to do in the last half, turning theory into practice. So let's start with the big question here. What is critical thinking?
Being able to take a situation and either apply what you have previously learned to that situation, to muddle through it or navigate through it, or take what you are currently learning and project forward as to what you will be using it for.
So it sounds like a lot of application, either applying previous experience to current experience or thinking about how you would apply current knowledge to future knowledge. Great. Application. What else? Is that all that critical thinking is? I'm sorry. Should I have said that we're going to have to think critically in here? Were you assuming that you weren't going to?
How about knowing what to ask?
Knowing what to ask. Why do you say that?
Sounds critical.
Uh-huh.
I think for me, when I think of critical thinking, I think it's just a little bit more than just thinking. It's like knowing what to ask, almost like being ahead of the game. Knowing what to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking.
And we can see that when so many of our students sit in the class and they just seem sometimes dumbfounded, or they don't know where to go, or they are not getting a concept and they're glazed over and they don't even know how to ask to clarify. Yeah, that's good. One more person want to talk? Selma?
Maybe whatever you learn today, you can apply in real life work situation later on.
Okay, so let's go.
Applies for math, for sure.
For math, for sure. So let's go back to application. What if we attack it from this direction? What are some ways that you know that you foster critical thinking in your classroom? So maybe just to reiterate some of the things that you said, you probably use some exercises where, okay, how would you apply this in a real world? In a math setting, maybe word problems do that, right?
In a project, right?
And projects. Okay, so what are some other ways? Yeah.
For example, I'm in anatomy and physiology.
Yeah.
Like examples of real patients and how they can apply any concept that we're learning to a patient or a case of some type, ruling things
Good.
out.
Good. More application.
Yes.
More application. That's also problem solving,
Mhm.
right? So getting problem solving is a big buzzword associated with critical thinking, where you get a problem, how are you going to solve it? Okay, and when you get to a certain point, you're like, whatever happens, we'll be able to figure it out. But I don't know about you, when I was a student, I was scared, I lacked confidence, I didn't know if I'd be able to solve the next problem. Other ways that people support critical thinking.
We actually have a critical thinking algorithm that has 5 steps to it. So as soon as a student identifies the problem, I always refer to that algorithm.
Yeah.
Say, what are you going to do? What are your options? Which one is the best? Pick it, try it, evaluate it, start over. So it's a constant thought process, critical thinking process. It's not just a thing. It's an ongoing process.
That sounds great, and I would love to see that, and that, because you said that, let me add that. I'm doing this this is my first time I'm doing this presentation here at Triton. I'm doing it again in the fall, so if you have any feedback like that's something I would love to talk about next time.
Sure.
But, yeah, great. So let's go into, this is all great, but critical thinking is huge. It's gigantic. When you really start having to put a presentation together on it, you realize there's so many different facets of it that we don't even realize that you're all doing in your classrooms, okay? So one of the reasons that we're talking about critical thinking, not just because it's one of the key things that we want to teach our students, is because it's one of our general education outcomes here at Triton College, right? And we are assessing it cross campus this upcoming academic year. So we are going to use something called the AACNU, American Association of Colleges and Universities Value Rubrics, and it has all these different criteria for how you assess critical thinking. I will email you all this presentation, so you don't need to write. I just want you to pay attention to be engaged. Make sure we have your emails. I'll email you. Don't share it with anyone because I want everyone to come here. They can get it after they come and see it. Here's how the AACNU defines critical thinking. Critical thinking is a habit of mind characterized by the comprehensive exploration of issues, ideas, artifacts, and events before accepting or formulating an opinion or conclusion. What do people think about that? You should have problems with it. 3 of our participants said application. There's no application here at all. So are they wrong or are you wrong?
We're not wrong.
We're not wrong, obviously. Yes.
I was thinking that no one could be wrong, but an opinion is a big part of the critical thinking. Like in my case, I'm teaching writing and reading. So usually I ask them for their opinion. I try to incorporate all their opinion about their reading, about their writing.
Yeah, I do that too because I teach English too, and I would tell them, I don't care what your opinion is, you just have to be able to support it soundly and logically with good evidence and multiple kinds of evidence. Triton College's general education outcome borrows from this. Explore issues, ideas, artifacts, and events before accepting and formulating an opinion or conclusion. So we talked about application, you talked about opinions. What else? Any other thoughts on these before I move on?
Action, taking action.
Taking action, why did you say that?
Well, that's what our students have to do. Like, if you're driving your car and the light goes yellow, you have to take some kind of action, right? You have to use your critical thinking and either figure out if you're going to hit the gas or hit the brake.
So it's thinking in the moment,
Yeah.
too. What else?
A lot of it also has to do in the healthcare field. You have to pull from your knowledge bank to formulate, in a crisis, what are you going to do? You can't just stand there and say, oh, someone's, turning green as you put a needle in there. Or,
Yeah.
You have to have that, split second.
Kind of like the yellow light. You've
Right.
gone through this over and over again, then now you know it, right? Now you know it. But when you're learning in the age building, you have to go through how many different repetitions and make how many different mistakes in order to get it, right? I think these are way too narrow. I think critical thinking is way bigger than any of these. You said yourself, three of you said application, and application is not even here. We're going to look at some models that include so many different aspects of this, okay? The point being, critical thinking to me is engaging in, no, let me go back. Oh, yeah, look at this definition I pulled from the website. I'll read it because it's so small. Critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined, this is almost a joke. Critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reason. I'm halfway through. Okay? Generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication as a guide to belief and action. In this exemplary form, it is based on universal intellectual values that trans subject matter divisions, clarity, accuracy, precision, consistency. I'm not even going to read it all. Compare that to this.
Sounds like somebody tried to put all the Bloom's verbs in.
Right.
Great. Bloom's, I love it. You're predicting. We'll get to Bloom's in a little bit, okay? So the point is, I think this is a better definition despite all the adverbs, okay? Here's one, the working one that I just kind of came up with. I'm a writer and I'm trying to pack as much as I can in as few words possible. Engaging in complex thought to find solutions to problems, seek and support new ideas or knowledge, or learn new ways of thinking. Comments? Yeah? Trying to do as much as I can with as few words possible. I think this includes the problem solving, the application, while also the supporting opinions, etc. Okay? What is this? It's a frog. Okay. Picture of a frog, but we've seen this before. Okay? It's not really a frog. What is it? It's a horse. It's an exercise designed to show you that you can see the same thing and look at it a different way, right? And it really, the lesson here is when you change the way you look at a thing, the thing changes, okay? I've been in how many different presentations where they show you this and there's like, what is this? Oh, no, really? Actually, it's a horse. It's a young woman? No, it's an old, yeah, we get it. You turn it sideways and it's a different thing, okay? Does everyone see that? Right? Okay. The point being, the way you change, when you change the way you look at a thing, the thing changes. Critical thinking, in its purest form, is training our minds to look at things in new ways. Whether it's a problem, okay, whether it's a task we're going to have to do over and over again, it could be any number of things, whether it's gaining new knowledge or seeing the world through a new lens or accepting a new opinion or challenging our own opinions. Critical thinking is looking at the world in new ways and doing the hard cognitive work of doing that, okay? So I've come up with a list of skills that I've tried to distill down, and like I said, I'm going to send these all to you, and I want you to think about what, let me go over them first, and then we'll talk. Concentrating through long thought processes. Maybe you know what to do. Maybe you've got this long math formula. You know what the step-by-step is, but concentrating on it to make sure that you get everything right along the way, that's critical thinking. Contemplating something from a new viewpoint. Anyone have a political discussion during the 4th of July? I did. Yeah, it wasn't fun, but what we've been talking about in the current cultural political climate is doing the individual work of trying to see other people's viewpoints, right, to expand our own ideas and framework. Connecting two separate concepts that could be either looking back at something, our history, and connecting it to or previous experience and connecting it to a problem we have here, or interdisciplinary, taking a social science concept and applying it to a piece of artwork or something. Assessing information for argument or validity. We do this in our English classes. Is this a good argument? Why or why not? Solving a problem by considering all the options. That's kind of what Terry was saying, where you go through this matrix for problem solving over and over. Questioning a concept or argument, creating a new idea and supporting it. And then the last one is my favorite, pushing past initial thoughts or judgments. And we all have our initial judgments about everything. This is what our implicit bias training is about, for those of you who've done it. And taking the initial thought or judgment and setting it aside and actually analyzing it and say, wait, do I really want to believe this? Do I really want to act on this? What do I actually want to believe and act on? That's critical thinking. Did you see any of these? Do we have any examples of these being used in any of your classrooms? Anything come to mind? So no one's teaching critical thinking here at all? How do you expect your students to do it if you're not going to sit here and do it?
Well, I think that when we have them look at different options and then pick the best one, or at least try one and be willing to fail, I think that's always a good strategy. If they try the wrong option and fail, they probably won't ever do that again.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll make a better choice the next time.
And sometimes you don't know all the options. Sometimes for our critical thinking is, okay, other options that exist that I wasn't even aware of yet, right?
I find that in my medical terminology class all the time. I know what I think the answer is, and then a student comes up with some other combination of word parts, and I go, oh, yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you what. Into your tables, I want you each to think and have a quick discussion. Pick one of these and think about a time that you used it, either in the class that you had taught or were in, or just anywhere. Okay, anywhere. Go ahead, think about it. I'll give you a couple minutes.
Connecting to separate concepts like even though they don't see the connection, they put
But
You're taking numbers.
But you use the statistics for, I mean, we use, there's a portion of the class that I just finished. So my program is students, they're clerks, not statistics like traditional statistics, of course, but statistics, how it applies to studies and understand whether this test is a better test, research that, sensitivity, specificity, it can go right on to the time you can start understanding from that. Well, and then if we don't cover it, we have to figure out the sensitivity, accuracy, and precision. And would you, for your mother, would you choose this test? Or would you choose this one? If you were sensible, would you choose this? That's what I want to think. So you're forced to do it.
Get people to
Okay, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back.
number one.
Everyone want to share?
Yeah. They're scared.
Do you want to share? No. Everyone want to share? Go ahead, please. Let's get one person. Yeah.
I mean, every single, I can see every single one, my students, if they are able to apply it to reading and writing, but especially connecting to separate concepts, like, you can give them two, not completely different readings, but they will have to find the, compare and contrast. They can apply connecting to separate concepts,
Mhm.
but they can compare and contrast and take it to writing.
Great. Yeah. I love that you said you can see all of them. That warms my heart and just validates my poor PowerPoint. But yeah, and two separate readings, and we'll talk about that more later. That's great. And there's something that's applicable, I think, in any discipline. Any discipline. In health careers, you could take a case study and stick it next to the textbook and ask them how to make those connections, right? How to apply this to that. Okay? What is the topic in your discipline that students struggle with due to a lack of critical thinking? Can anyone think of one? Just think of one, like, I know. Well, give me one. Yeah.
I've changed, so my most recent set of students that graduated, they seemed to be struggling connecting at the very end, everything that they had learned. And I kind of
Synthesizing,
yeah, and I came in the middle, so I'm taking that example of the struggle and I'm applying it to my new set of students, and I'm constantly asking them, why? Why did you choose that? Or can we relate it back so that it's when they get to that graduation point, and I ask them the same questions, hoping
Yeah.
they don't stare at me like deer in headlights.
You want the knowledge to snowball throughout the semester
Exactly.
so it all sticks together at the end. Yeah. Good. Did I see another hand? Another Tuan?
Sure, I'll say something. How you can use previous semester and current semester. Previous semester, teaching math 1-2, we were looking at how logic applies to mathematics. In this case, I have to use critical thinking, so we use that in relationship with writing as well too. So it was
I love that. Yeah, exactly.
I warmed your heart. Okay. So my current class are doing the same thing. They're doing the critical thinking in regards to how a blood alcohol level applies to their writing assignment and how it relates to drinking and driving. And they have to write an assignment. They're doing a project and looking at the data. So they have to collect data from several individuals on campus and relating that into real life and how the critical part of it comes into and how the formula actually works out to get those individuals sober after a period of time.
That's great. So going through the long formula is concentrating through a long thought process. But even like taking a math concept and writing a paper about it, that's seeing something from a new viewpoint, because I remember your students saying, who writes a paper in math? And that's exactly right. It's like mathematicians have to write papers all the time. You both already answered the second question, so you're go-getters. Thank you. Here's a couple quotes. We're going to talk about critical thinking in class discussion and then critical thinking in some assignments. I'm going to kind of move at a pretty good clip, and you just fire back to me if you've got some comments or whatever, okay? So I'm just going to read two quick quotes. This one from Pedagogy, they express, only dialogue, which requires critical thinking, is also capable of generating critical thinking. Without dialogue, there's no communication. Without communication, there can be no true education. I don't think that dialogue necessarily needs to be between teacher and student. It can be between student and text, student and activity, student with. That dialogue needs to happen for critical thinking and learning to occur. And the second one is, second quote, this is from my English methods textbook from college. Teachers who effectively create inquiry-based classrooms emphatically do not view questions as a means of seducing students into parroting the text or syllabus. Rather, they see questions as instruments to open, engaged minds to unsuspecting possibilities. I love that. Questions as instruments. I created this presentation initially, it was just focused on questioning. Sparking critical thinking through questioning in the classroom. Because I would do so many classroom observations, was the instructor would give a discussion and would ask the students a question and then let them off the hook. Then, stop. They could have gone, one more question. Why do you think that way? Give me an example. Okay, what can we learn from that? What does that apply to? But instead, the student would give a surface level answer and they would kind of let it sit there, and it wasn't critical thinking. Questions are instruments to open engaged minds to unsuspected possibilities. That goes back to what Rick said about not knowing what to ask, too, a little bit. I like this too. This is not easy. Expect and teach your students to expect that every student will speak every day about the lesson. Wow, that's tough. So going back to this, what's the topic in your discipline that students struggle with due to a lack of critical thinking? My example from Rhetoric 101 is counterargument. Counterargument was the most difficult thing for me to teach students. You give your thesis, you have your first point, your second point, your third point, but then you need to tell me what someone else would say back to you and why you still believe what you believe. It was so difficult for students to wrap their head around figuring out what someone else would say back to them. Like, what do you mean I'm wrong? What do you mean someone's going to argue with me? So, for example, if your argument was unhealthy food should be taxed higher than healthy food, the counterargument would be, some might say the government should not judge how healthy food is and therefore shouldn't tax it. This was so difficult for students to understand. Okay? So I'm going to use this moving forward in a couple examples. So critical thinking in class discussions. I'm going to give you stuff you can apply in your classrooms. These are all open-ended questions. Open-ended questioning does not let students off the hook. Asking stuff like, where do you think we should start? Or what should the steps be? Or how would you do that? Or what are you assuming? Doesn't let the student give a one-word yes or no answer. One word yes or no answer, okay? Asking students open-ended questions forces them to think and give you something, right? Okay. These questions here, they can be used as templates, so you can take these and have them on a cheat sheet on your podium and use them in class discussions if you want, okay? Comments about this? If not, then you just chill out. We're just going to run through a bunch of models and you'll get the PowerPoint. You can go through this later. Professor, Juan?
I just have a quick one.
Yeah.
My students are doing a project and most of their questions are open-ended, so I just thought it was hilarious because, my Math 80 class, for those who don't know, it is leading to Math 101, quantitative literacy, Math 102, liberal arts math, and Math 170 statistics. So the Math 80 class this summer went around campus to collect data, and most of the questions that they have are open-ended questions where they have to apply critical thinking, and the data has to match up with this one. That's I just wanted to.
Yeah, and you especially see that in math because when you give a student an algebra problem, that's a closed-ended question, right? You just solve for x and whatever x is. But then if you say solve for x and then explain to me the method that you use to do that and why, that's an open-ended question. It forces them to think. So open-ended questioning in your classroom discussions. Yeah, and I'm actually going to jump ahead to another slide later. Here, yeah, let me go. I'm going to go through all this. I'm going to do a different one. Open-ended questions, and then you combining that with using silence effectively. We see this a lot, especially in young adjuncts who want to fill the awkward silence. And if you're going to use open-ended questions effectively, you can use that silence with your students. So don't be afraid to let the question sit there. Be patient. You can rephrase the question or call on them. Ask what they're stuck on. But letting them sit in the silence allows them to think more. And when you use this effectively, I see someone laughing. Huh?
I used that today.
You did? Tell us about it.
We were talking about theoretical and experimental probability, and I asked them a definition of what they thought it was and a general definition. So I waited to see if anyone would answer the question first. And they were all talking to each other and trying to break down the word itself to figure out what it meant in the case. And then give an example, and then I stated the question and asked them again, what do you think theoretical experimental probability is? That's right. That was it. Because it was related to what we were talking about.
Thank you. I bet for all math professors that would be really funny, but I appreciate it. Yes,
They
go.
used to just, because we do model checkoffs on anatomical regions. And I get in small groups and go one-on-one, so they, after they've studied, but what do you do if someone's like totally embarrassed? I ask somebody, what's this? And they turn red, you feel bad. So, I wouldn't sit there in silence.
Yeah.
Totally embarrass them. I just kind of like move on. And maybe I move on too quickly.
In that case, this is more, when I'm talking about this, it's more for group discussion. In that case, if it's more of a one-on-one or a small group and you see them embarrassed, I would reassure them.
Yeah.
But then so I used to teach this in tutoring too. There's a spectrum between open-ended and closed questions, and you can kind of scale it depending on where you think the students are. So you could start with some more closed questions. Okay, well, what is this? You know this, right? What is that? What is that? And then scaffold and work them up to that. Okay? Yeah, good question though. I see another hand over here.
Oh, I was gonna say, I had a professor in my master's program who would ask a question and then he would wait a full 15 minutes for someone to generate a response. So I think that's probably a little bit excessive.
That's extreme.
But the silence was definitely effective.
I don't know that you need to go more than 30 seconds or 45 seconds. Even that'll feel like forever, right?
Right.
Okay, let's wait. Right.
We got people to answer though, because nobody felt like sitting around waiting. So they actually would jump in with something to get the discussion started.
Because we want to fill that awkward silence. So I just waited 5 seconds before he raised his hand. I just wanted to see. Yes, go ahead. But that's how powerful it can be. Because we're such social creatures, we want to fill that silence. Yes, sir, you may.
Well, today I was doing the same thing, and I would just throw a word out to generate conversation. So I waited about 2 minutes or so, and my students were looking around at each other, I guess trying to see if the answer would bounce off the wall. However, I just used a word and I put it on the board. I said, well, what do you think about this word associated to probability? And then it started a conversation because no one wants to be the first person.
Yeah, great. That's a great technique. Okay, let me go back. I misplaced that slide. It should be back over there. So you've got kind of okay. So So before this was this slide, open and questioning. This is called the question circle. I don't know if you have ever seen this. You connect the subject matter. Have you seen the subject matter to their personal reality and then the external world? Okay. Otherwise, we say this: text to reader, text to world, reader to world. Okay. So you can see there's like a fancy diagram over here. But you give them a story, and you're like, how do you relate? Tell me a personal story. How do you relate to this character in the story? That's text to reader. Text to world is taking your textbook. How do you apply this to a real world case if you were serving a patient? Okay. Reader to world. Okay. Well then, how do you you could ask them, what strengths and weaknesses do you have that would make you a good fit for this position? That's reader to world. You can also do, you mentioned text to text as well. So there's a lot of different conversations or combinations that you can do here. So this is a pretty intricate model that you can go over. Then of course we've got Bloom's taxonomy. Well, a lot of us have seen this, but I noticed at the beginning when I asked you about critical thinking, 3 of your answers were all application. Okay, and that's in the bottom half. Who hasn't seen Bloom's taxonomy? No one wants to invent it, of course. Okay, so each one of these, it's important to note that each one builds upon the previous one. And knowledge and comprehension are going to be more of your closed-ended questions. What is it? What happened and where? What year was George Washington born? Okay. What is the role of the United States Congress? That's more of a comprehension question. How does it work? What's the main idea? What facts show it to be true? Okay. So when you're designing your lessons or you're doing your discussions, it's good to make sure that you're mixing it up. You've got to establish this foundation, which is what you were talking about the first half of the semester, is about a lot of this stuff, and the second half is a lot more building up to Bloom's taxonomy. So I just have my example. I'm talking about counter-argument and trying to get students to understand how to formulate an argument against their own argument. You just walk them up the chain, walk them up the pyramid. So to make a counter-argument, what's the main argument against your thesis? Just what is it? Okay? Why would someone think or feel that way? Why don't you agree with them? Okay, and you see you can build it up, and each one is more complex and requires more critical thinking. How do they support their argument? Then you're analyzing their argument. What changes should you make to your argument based on the argument that you know that they have? And then how strong is their argument? How strong is your argument? So I put this in here as an example to see how you can use Bloom's taxonomy to create these critical thinking questions. Okay, a couple do I want? I've got couple more models I'm not going to have time for. These are a bunch of different questions from this book, Asking the Right Questions, A Guide to Critical Thinking. You'll have this in the email, can look at it later. Here's another one from a great book called Creating Meaning that I cut the title off of, and this book is organized. These are the chapters in it. You can see, I look at this, I'm like analyzing causal effects, identifying point of view. We've talked about some of these, but this is also a different way to kind of conceptualize some critical thinking, okay? So now I want to talk about, we talked about this, critical thinking assignments, and there are a lot of different ways to view critical thinking in your assignments. It's a little different than classroom discussions. You can use a lot of the models that we have here, but I want to talk about an example that I got from HLC. I went to the HLC conference and they presented a model for using critical thinking in your assignments. So what they did was they showed a video from Desperate Housewives, the TV show, in which a character played by Courtney Cox was drinking a lot of alcohol, and she had like a big glass of wine, and she was saying that, oh, I read a study that says that doctors found that women who drank moderate amounts of alcohol were less likely to be overweight or obese in the future. And so alcohol helps keep women skinny. And so then she started chugging her wine. Okay? So we're all like, ha ha ha, okay? So you could give this to your students as a case study, and this is this is an example, and I feel like this model could be ported to a lot of different disciplines, but let's just ask us the question. So we've got the information, we've got the conclusion. How strongly does the information given support the conclusion, and why or why not?
Well, I don't think it does. I think it's just somebody who wants to justify their drinking.
Okay. What about the study?
What study, what doctors?
Yes,
How many
identify the
women?
study, like,
Because it does say study, right?
Uh-huh.
identify the study with how to read it, so you can make your own evaluation of the study makes sense.
Not only that, what doctors are you referring to?
Dr. Oz,
Which
Dr. Phil,
doctor?
like, yeah,
Yeah.
What kind of
Dr.
alcohol?
Seuss. What kind of alcohol? How many women surveyed? What are the demographics of the women?
Yeah, probably I was about to say.
Right.
They just pick the women they want the answer to. So like slice and statistics.
Yeah.
Into their own pool. They
Yeah,
come to the conclusion
exactly.
they want to.
And then even if the information given is correct, so it's a, you know, it's a trustworthy study, the doctors, like this is what the data shows. The data doesn't necessarily support a causation, like conclusion. So it could be a correlation, or that information could be correct, but just to go from the information given straight to a causal relationship, like that doesn't. How do we get to that?
Right, you're making the my next slide. Yes. The point here is one of the things you can ask your students is about strength of support. Just asking how strong is the evidence for this, okay? So what Lauren said goes into the next thing that you can look for in your students is alternative interpretations. Oh, going the wrong way. Alternative interpretations. So other than this conclusion, what other interpretations for the information given could there be?
Maybe it works with men.
Okay. It makes men skinny as well?
Yeah.
Okay, but that would still lead to this conclusion now. I have a list here. Okay, so if I said the medical study, doctors found women who drink alcohol were less likely to be overweight, what other interpretations could you make? What other reasons could there be? Like you said, Lauren, correlation is not causation, so what other issues could be at play here? I have a list of them I took from HLC. I'm trying to find.
Well, alcohol tends to suppress your appetite, so they might be drinking enough alcohol that they either forget to eat or just don't get hungry.
That's great. Yeah, that's
Or
good.
it could be linked with other mental health issues or other kind of emotional stress. Like there could be other things going on with moderate alcohol consumption that
Yeah.
could also impact weight.
Great. Yeah. What else?
Being skinny is not necessarily being healthy.
Uh-huh. That's good too. So here's a list that we came up with in this session. Could be socioeconomic status. Could be women who are able to afford more alcohol are also able to afford healthier food as opposed to eating less healthy food or junk food. They might, again, class issues, they might go to the gym more. They might be able to afford being able to get out and exercise more. They could be offsetting some of the calories by not eating as much. It could be associated to religious or cultural beliefs, different age of the women. So there's a number of different ways that this could be interpreted, and you can ask your students for this. Alternative interpretations. And then the last one is, what additional information would be needed to more fully evaluate the situation? What do we think? Yeah.
The studies, what medical studies?
What matter?
Yeah, based on what studies?
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of empirical data.
Yeah.
Which will indicate why.
Again, more demographic information about the women, how many drinks, how often, what were their ages, what were their other medical histories, those kinds of things. So when you're designing your assignments, I took those and combined them with some other ones, just to give some categories of some things that we can look for in our assignment. Strengths of support, alternative interpretations, asking for additional information. You can ask for logic models, ask students to explain their thinking step by step. We have to do that in our jobs, don't we? Or multiple solutions. We talked about outside connections and taking a different perspective. And lastly, this seems so difficult for some students, it's just using your imagination. You know, we teach in grade school, we have students use their imagination all the time, and we get up to college and it's just like, nope, you just got to jump through this hoop, meet this learning objective and that one, when your imagination is still so important, okay? So, yeah. Any comments about any of these? You see yourself using any of these? Yeah? Good. I want to know, here's what I want to know. I want to look back at this.
Me too.
Thank you. Can we see if any of these, either this slide or the other slide, you know what? I'm going to go all the way back up here and do this. You can see I'm kind of thinking on the fly with this, and I appreciate your patience.
I'm positive I have the answer to one.
Okay, we didn't talk about it.
Number 6.
First of all, I want to know which ones of these, what kind of thinking they require to answer, because they're not all the same. TJ, no, I believe in you. I believe in you. Number 6, Tom says to Jerry, 3 of the first 5 U.S. presidents, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, died on the 4th of July. Jerry replies, I'll bet one of them was Monroe. Tom is surprised that Jerry knows this because Jerry has no knowledge of any U.S. president. Why is Jerry so sure?
Because he was the 5th. Otherwise, they would have said 3 out of the first 4. Did I get it?
That's right.
Yep, that's right. Very good. Yep, exactly.
So what concept did I use?
Yeah.
One of the ones on the other slide.
Okay. Here. I think she used
A logic model.
this one, logic model. Good. Yeah. I think you pushed past the initial judgment. The initial judgment is 3 of the first 5, and you're like, okay, well, I gotta figure out who. No, it's sitting right there in front of you. You wouldn't have said it, right? If you just take a step back and realize that, yeah. Anyone want to take a stab at any of the other ones of these? Woman led shot to death in the parking lot. A light snow covers the ground, leading to the body of the set of footprints which runs between 2 sets of parallel tracks. Leaning away from the dead woman are the 2 sets of parallel tracks only. Who should the police look for?
Somebody in a car, a wheelchair.
Somebody in a wheelchair.
I
Very
had it written
good.
down, I did.
Yeah, very good. How did you
That
come
was
up
my
with
second.
that?
Because the woman was running,
Yeah.
and so the person following her. At first I thought, it, you know, you have to have something that is going to move in a parallel line. So there was no mention of other footprints.
Mhm.
So you have to have something that will give that parallel pattern.
Yeah.
And she is running ahead and then falls down. So
Mm-hmm. So you have to use your imagination. It's like, okay, what do I know in the world that makes parallel sets of tracks? Someone said a car, Then you said, well, is the car fit here? Not really, but a wheelchair might, because a wheelchair is about the size of a person. That's how you got it. Good, yeah. Did we use one of these? Contemplating something from a new viewpoint, maybe, because when I first read this, I'm thinking the killer's gonna have the footprints, but then it's like, oh no, a killer in a wheelchair. How can you physically stand behind your father while he stands behind you?
Mirror.
Nope.
Big
This one's easy. You just think through it. You want to stand up?
Back to
Stand
back.
up. Let's do it. Yeah.
Oh,
she,
yeah, you got it.
Yep, she got it. Back to back.
Oh.
Back to considering options. Yeah. You stand back to back. Then you're both staying behind each other. Good. Okay, I feel we have like 3 minutes. I feel like we can get through all this. Should Z go above or below the line, and why?
Above, because it's not switching.
Oh.
Are you joking?
Huh? I'm
You're
not
right.
joking.
It's
Because
above.
guidelines
It's
are-
above because all the ones above have straight lines and all the ones below have curvy lines. I want to say you one second. Right. What did Lauren use? Yep.
Yeah, I was trying to say something.
She did a number of things. She assessed information for validity. She kind of created a new idea because it's not readily.
The alphabet from a different
Yeah.
viewpoint, you know.
Yeah.
I never thought about squeezing one versus.
What's the next letter in the sequence? O, T, T, F, F, S, S. Do you know? Anyone? The next letter in the sequence? O, why?
Because the pairing.
No.
Okay.
O, T, T, F, F,
Oh, the
S, S.
question. No.
No.
He didn't say it wasn't O, he just said your reason was wrong.
It's not O.
Oh, okay.
Both are wrong.
Math people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh.
E for 8. E.
Why?
E.
It's the first letter of.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
These all come from a game full of riddles that my parents would play with us all the time when we were little, so I'm just looking for these. All right, we got 2 more.
7,
Yeah, 2 more. A child was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Their parents were both born in Boston, Massachusetts. This child is not an American citizen.
Okay, I don't know.
So what is that?
No.
E, what is
I don't want to say it out loud, but is it a child of these?
A child of what?
I don't want to say it out loud. I don't want to embarrass myself. A child of those? Not a contract?
No, because that would still
And
be,
she just.
They would have to
they
have
would
been born
still be
here.
born on American soil.
Yeah, well, the parents could be.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I know.
Does anyone know number 5? Why is the child not an American citizen?
I just say no, but then.
No? Anyone know?
Yeah.
Questioning a concept. What year would this be? Well, if it was like 1774.
Oh.
Yep. It was before, yep. The child was born in the 1760s, before the founding of the United States. Last one, there's an English word with these characteristics. The first 2 letters signify a male, the first 3 letters signify a female, the first 4 signify a great man, the word itself signifies a great woman. What is the word? That one's tough.
Hero?
Okay, yeah.
Was it?
You got one of them.
Okay.
Say it again.
Hero, when?
Heroin, yep.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
He, her, hero, heroin, and there's a very illegal drug in the mix there too.
Yeah.
Very good.
I just went hero and.
Very good. You just kind of thought about, pulled it out, use your imagination, yeah. Okay.
That's good.
Go Mary Lou.
So I want to wrap this up. So again, I want to thank you all for coming. I gave you a lot of different things to think about, but also a lot of different things to apply and tools to use in your class. Does anyone have any questions right now about anything that we talked about? Does anyone give me, can we just get a couple of people, what's one thing you're going to take away from this?
Bring more ending open questions for my students.
That's good.
Silence.
Use silence, yeah, good. More open-ended questions, yep. Have students make comparisons to different things or connect to different subjects, right? Have them build on the knowledge that they're using, okay? Thank you all for coming. I'm in E103 with Rick and Kevin, and I hope you're thinking critically for the rest of the week. Thank you all.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Did everyone sign the sign-in?
Again, if you sign the sign-in sheet, I will email you the presentation because I would love it. I would love it if you had as a reference. Use it as a reference.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Make sure you fill out the evaluation sheets, they're very helpful. Thanks a lot.
No, I'm working on a textbook project on the system. That's not